Hi, and welcome to Info 220 Intro the Data Set. We're going to be working with Vlookup again, but this time we're going to be using it for approximate values. We create a new column called acres, and in this case, we're going to look up the value for acres, which is going to be in H2. We have a named range called acres. We have the second column from the table it's returning, and true, which means we're going to work with an approximate value. So just like we did earlier, we're going to go to tables. And in tables, we're going to create a new set called acres. So from E2, or anywhere you'd like to put it, you're going to type in 0, 0.5, and 1 in the first column, and then your groupings of 0.00, 0.49, 0.50 to 0.99, and greater than or equal to 1. This is going to be our table. We're going to highlight that table, define name, and call it acres. Now, when you create this, you're going to notice at the bottom, tables is going to be capitalized with an exclamation point. That means the sheet. And then the range. Now this has already been created, so if you notice we have acres here, and it shows that our table and our range, and so we can use that now in our function. So let's go back to property. Now, in this case, we're going to do a VLOOKUP again. I want to double click on VLOOKUp. And I notice that my acres are actually in H2. So I can click on H2 while the function is open, and it will put in H2. Remember, I use my name range of acres, and you notice this little box down here pops up, and it shows you the actual acres. You could double click on that if you wanted to, and it will fill in the named range. We want to return the second column, which was our groupings, and this time we are going to use true, which is an approximate match. When I hit enter, I get 0 to 0.49. How this works is it looks at the actual value of 0 up to 0.49. If it fits within that range, it will return this value. If the values fit between 0.5 to 0.99, then it will return this value, or if it's greater than or equal to 1, then it will return this value. So that's how you use a true, and it will also return those values. Is going to be capitalized. Hi, and welcome to Intro to Data Set. This is the Info 220 class. And then the range. We're going to be looking at horizontal lookup. This has already been created. In our previous lessons, we looked at vertical lookup. Well, the horizontal lookup uses rows instead of columns. And so we can use that now in our function. It's a very simple process. So let's go back to property. If we look at our existing sheet here, let's blow it up a little bit. In this case, here we have 7 rows. If I start counting here, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And I notice that my acres what we want to do is take our value that's in H4 and return our value, and it will put in for the total sales on row 7. Remember, I use my name range of acres, and you notice this little box. First of all, we would start off with H lookup, and it shows you the actual acres. We have H4, which was our value that was right here. You can't see it right now, but it was quarter 3. We want to return the second column. We want to use our range from C3, which is here using quarter 1. And this time it is okay to include the headings because we are using rows instead of columns. So we go from C3 and we highlight down to F9. That's going to be our range. Up to 0.49. We also do not have to use absolutes because we will not be copying this formula. If the values fit between we want to pull row 7. Why then it will 7? Return this value. Remember, there were 7 rows. The total that we want to return happens to be on the 7th row. So that's why we choose 7. And then false. False is basically saying that we want an exact match. The exact match comes from the first row where we're looking at quarter 3. So, when we return it, we get 1,065, which matches the total in quarter 3. And that's how you use an Vlookup using an exact match value of false. Hi and welcome to Info 220. This time we're going to be working with if statements. First of all, we have two scenarios. One is pricing group A and one is pricing group B. With pricing group A, we have the cost per gallon for orders under 500 gallons and the cost per gallon for orders that are equal to or greater than 500 gallons for group A. For group B, we have cost per gallon for the first 500 gallons and cost per gallon for anything above 500. So we need to be able to do if statements for both costs. Now for cost A, we're going to be looking at our values that are located in column F. We need to make a statement that says if it is true, basically saying that if it's under 500 gallons, we're going to multiply that by the value in D3. If it is not true, we're going to multiply it by the value in D4. So here's our equation. We have if, and that comes from our functions. If you type in equal if, you will see it come up and you can double click on the function and then you fill in F3 minus, F3 is less than 500. So for example, any value less than 500. The if statement is broken up into three parts. The first part is the logical test. The second part is if it's true, and the third part if it's false. So in this case, if F3 is less than 500, we're going to multiply F3 by the value in D3. Also notice we made this absolutes because when we drag our formula, we still want to point back to pricing group A only. Now, if it is false, we're going to take F3 times $D $4, and we will also make that an absolute. So our first value we get is 4,554. When we copy it, for example, the bottom is false. So in this case, F6 is greater than 500, which means it's going to calculate the last part of this formula. Okay, now for cost B. We want to give for the first 500 gallons a price of $24. If anybody orders above 500 gallons, we're going to cost that out at $18. However, there is a little bit of math involved. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so you can see. Now, we still are going to create our if statement, but what we're going to do is if it's true, we're just going to multiply the value in F3 times the value in F8. But if it's false, we need to price out our first 500 gallons first. Then we subtract our first 500 gallons from our order, and then what's left will be above 500 gallons, and we're going to price it at the value in D9. So this if statement would be written if F3 is less than or equal to 500. If it's true, we take F3 and multiply it by the value in D8. If it's false, we take the first 500 and we multiply that by D3 because we already know that it is equal to or more than 500. So we're going to take the 500, multiply it by the value that is actually, that value should be the value in D8. And then we're going to subtract our value where we're going to take F3 minus 500. So in this case, let's look at the bottom one. At 1675, when we take out 500, that leaves 1175. The 1175 will get multiplied by the value in D9. So when we hit enter, we get 32,650. So that is how we create an if statement that uses either the pricing group A or pricing group B. Remember, an if statement can use a logical test, value if true, and that could be simple as text or a calculated formula, and the value of false, which also could be text or a calculated formula.